meeting YouTube.
Yes.
If I just showed up. Thank you all for being here. Welcome to the April 9th meeting of the BAR Large in the Leonard Krawcheck meeting room here at number 2 George Street. My name is Jay White. I'm the acting chair this evening. The board members present to my left are James Metters, Stephen Brown, and Bill Crampton. Then to my right, Dee Dee Worthing-Galvin, city architect, Lawrence Courtney, also staff architect, and then Brad Thomas, our staff architectural planner at the table to keep us straight. I'll run through this as many of you have heard before. Applicants have been required to submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Staff will control the slide presentation unless the clicker is working. That includes everything that was submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with our submittal requirement. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during the presentation if the clicker is not working. If the clicker is working, point it at the laptop on the screen. That's not on here. I just ad-libbed that. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their names when speaking for clarity of record. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the City of Charleston Public Meeting Channel on YouTube. Your appearance here is your consent to be recorded. The order of the meeting will be as follows: introduction and overview of the project by city staff to the board and for the public, followed by a 10-minute applicant presentation. If you need additional time, please request that the chair at the outset of your presentation. And this will follow with any questions of the applicant by the board or staff. Any and all presenters clearly state their name for the record. Persons affiliated with the project, if you're an owner, developer, designer, consultant, or otherwise, please speak during this portion of the meeting rather than during public comment. This will be followed by a period of public comment. Any written public comments were due by noon the day before the meeting. None were received. And any received comments would be transmitted to and considered by the board members in advance of the meeting. Any member of the public who wishes to be heard in person on the agenda item is requested to state their name and address for the record, and to be reminded there's a 2-minute limit for these comments unless extended by the chair. The applicant does not respond to comments made by the public during this time. This will be followed by city staff comments and recommendation, and then there'll be a period for an applicant response or clarification to either public comments or city staff comments and recommendation. About a 5-minute limit unless extended by me. The applicant does not have to use this time if you don't feel it's necessary. This will be followed by board discussion and a vote. After the presentation is over and public comment is closed, the applicant can clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising a hand, waiting to be called upon. Board members will be polled by the chair for comments and then vote on a motion. Chair will reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion, please correct me if I've not reread the motion accurately. Once the motion is in proper order and seconded, each member when voting should respond yea in favor or nay not in favor. And the results will be posted on the city website. Only one item has been withdrawn. Item B2, vested rights extension for 214-216 Spring Street, drawn by the applicant. We've received no public comments. And also, as y'all are all aware, this board is restricted to discussing the architectural quality of the project. Comments regarding zoning, such as parking, traffic, livability, lot coverage, or garbage, really can't be raised here. And also, turn off all cell phones and other potentially disruptive devices. And I define that very broadly. So, all right, with that, let's get going. All right. First item up is a review of the minutes from the March 12th meeting. Any comments or a motion to approve? Move to approve. So moved. Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Passes unanimous. All right. Item B1.
Item B1 is 584 Meeting Street, and they are requesting a second 1-year extension of their vested rights for final approval. And just to remind everyone, per ordinance, beginning with the date of review and approval from the last governing body, the applicant has an automatic 2-year vested right period followed by 5 1-year extensions if submitted within the proper timeframes. This extension would expire on September 14th, 2026.
Okay, with that, this being as ministerial act as John Robinson used to say, do I have a motion to approve?
Yes.
Have a second?
Second.
Right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 4-0. It'll slow down, don't worry. All right, item B2 has been withdrawn, so now we're on to 245 UG.
245 UG Street is new construction in Height Districts 4 to 12 in the historic corridor district, and they're requesting a conceptual approval of a new hotel. We're going to show the location to everyone. And then now we're ready for the applicant presentation.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Ramos. I'm a local architect, and I'm here on behalf of the owner and developer of this project, TMGOC Ventures. This is a new 150-room hotel, and we're here asking for conceptual BAR approval. I'm also asking for permission for a 25-foot tall ground floor.
Stephen, who is MC&G Architects?
MCG Architects is an architect of record for the project. So I am the facade architect. MCG is the architect of record. The site is at the corner of Hugie and Meeting Street. We're fairly recently asking for permission for demolition of the existing little structure there. I think it's a site that everyone's familiar with. It's definitely a heavily trafficked site. And it's an important site at the junction of those two roads. It's also notable that this site is extremely visible from the elevated highways. So we always take into account the highest priority is the ground level experience for pedestrians. On this particular project, I'm also thinking about the elevated experience of seeing this building because it will be highly visible at this critical intersection. These are views of the existing site at the corner. This is simply a survey. It is two parcels currently that will be combined into one. This is a site plan that shows the massing, and I'll do some cleaning. The project has different heights to it. At the corner, it's 4 stories, this area in orange. The main mass of the hotel is 7 stories, and then there's an 8-story portion right in the middle. I've included this graphic to illustrate developments that have been forth to the BAR for approvals in the past. I don't know the fates of any of these projects when they will occur, but I think it's an important graphic to show that in what is currently an underdeveloped part of the city, there are plans for growth that is really going to help pedestrianize this part of the town. It also helps to show the scale of the footprint of our project in relationship to the other developments. This is the ground floor plan for the hotel. I'll point out a few things starting at Meeting Street. There is a lot of outdoor dining at ground level. There is a covered loggia along Meeting Street. There's also an alley to the south that is open to the sky. The restaurant for the hotel is on the corner. We very much want the hotel to have its own identity. So you'll see that the architecture is set up well, that corner building kind of reads as almost not a standalone structure, but a separate piece of the building. The hotel lobby is along Hugie Street at the center of the building. The parking garage entrance is on the eastern end of the building, and then all of the parking is along the south. This is a mezzanine level. All of the areas in gray are actually occupied space, and everything that you see in white is kind of open to below 2-story space. This is the level 2. On the western end of the building is where the ballroom will be. I would kind of think of like the Francis Marion Hotel where you look up at level 2 and you'll see the ballroom at that level. Very similar setup. Hotel rooms on the east. This is level 3. The ballroom is a 2-level space, so you'll see it's open to below at level 3. Level 4 is hotel rooms. Level 5 is where the stepping of the mass occurs. So on the western end, there's an open air terrace that you see on the west, and then you have your hotel room. So the massing on the right is the 7-story mass. Level 6 and 7 are the same footprint hotel rooms. And then level 8 is a rooftop restaurant and bar. It's designed as a penthouse that's kind of central to that massing with big open air terraces on each end of the project. This is the roof plan. There is a hipped roof at level 8, and that roof has been designed to add a profile to the skyline, but also to disguise and hide all of the mechanical equipment. That's something that's very important to me, especially since this building is seen from an elevated perspective. We want to ensure that that equipment is hidden. I forgot to start by asking for 5 additional minutes.
Too late?
Too late?
No, it's fine. You just- yeah.
Appreciate it. So now I'm going to talk about the facade now. I'll start with some precedents. These are buildings that are in this district of town. Most of them are new. Of course, the cigar factory is an older building, but there definitely is somewhat of an industrial character that's been occurring with some of the newer buildings. I think a lot of it having to do with the character of the cigar factory. And so I think playing off that to a certain degree is something that I'm interested in. The images on the left are homes that are directly across the street from this project on Meeting Street. Pulling a lot of inspiration from those buildings, in particular the masonry work. And there's some really beautiful detailing, as well as the arched loggia at the porches. And so that architecture, I'm very looking to create a dialogue across the street with the corner building. And then One Broad Street and the Wagner building on the right side. Those are just fantastic corner buildings. And so I'm drawing inspiration from those projects as well. A couple older pictures, buildings that I look at a lot. The People's Building and the Timrod Hotel, which is the image in the top left. For this particular project, I'm looking at the tops of those buildings, and I really appreciate the way the tops of those buildings are celebrated. And that is very much something I'm looking to do with this project, to celebrate the top. Another more modern building that does something similar is the One Kuplo condo building in the bottom left. These are some early conceptual images that show my thinking behind how the building is massed and organized. You'll see the images on the left show how the building steps from the lower 4-story mass up to the 8-story mass, how the facade is organized with bookends, a very kind of calm pattern of windows, but really emphasizing the ground floor and the corner. And then this was a perspective sketch that illustrates that concept. So you can see kind of the distinctness of the corner mass from the 7-story mass. And then these are the final computer renderings. The project is fairly open on all 4 sides, so these renderings do represent views and vantage points that can be had of the project. So this would be the northern facade along Hugie Street. You'll see that the corner building is brick, as well as the podium on all 4 sides of the project, whereas the taller mass is stucco. I'm going to kind of take you on a tour around the building. This is as viewed from the corner of Meeting in Hugie. A lot of emphasis on the detailing, not just at the corner, but the base of the building, as well as the top of the building. You can see that ballroom that I mentioned there on level 2. This would be the southern facade of the building. You'll see that there's the brick mass, and then there's a hyphen, and then the stucco mass of the building. On this side of the building, the stair towers form the bookends of the building. This is the southeastern corner of the project. This would be the eastern facade. And then this is one of the elevated views. So this is a view 70 feet in the air that would represent one of the views from the raised highway. You get a good vantage point of the 8th floor at this vantage point, and you can see that shaped hipped roof. And then this is one more elevated view. I like this view because it shows how the building is simply organized and very nicely balanced. And then these are the two-dimensional elevations, which I'll go through pretty quickly since the perspectives do a good job of telling the story. The west, east. These are the streetscape elevations along Hugie Street. This is Meeting Street. These are building sections. These are helpful to show setbacks, as well as you can see the treatment of the 8th floor and the sloped roof. And this is the final slide. I'm asking for conceptual BAR approval. I'm also asking for approval of the 25-foot tall ground floor. I feel very good about this design. I feel that the height and the massing has been kind of carefully crafted. I feel like the scale, the repetition and rhythm of the facade feels appropriate. And the architectural direction to me speaks nicely to Charleston and this district, but it will also have details that are very much contemporary. And the 25-foot tall ground floor, although that is a tall ground floor, I feel like it is appropriate for the scale of this project. And there will be lots of architectural details that do address the human scale, things such as the water table, awnings, canopies, transom windows. And lastly, I forgot to mention this is in the UP Height District. So we will need to achieve 8 points to make this project possible. Things that we are considering for that project, we took a similar path with the Flatiron Hotel, which is the Charleston Rises sustainability program. We will likely look at photovoltaics on the roof, as well as some alternative energy credits. At this point, I'll be happy to open it up for any questions.
Okay, any questions from the board or from staff?
Within the 25-foot, and I think I see some of it in here, but there are some mezzanines in that 25 feet.
That's right. Yeah, so I think mezzanine is about 13 feet above grade. And then the mezzanine is about 12 feet.
Is this project located in a flood zone?
It is.
Is there any flood mitigation strategies or that you're thinking of at this point, or is that something you think you bring in later?
So this is in an 8-10 flood zone. We have to flood proof up to 12 feet. The dirt around the site varies, but it's around 7 feet. So effectively, we're going to have to flood protect the building up to 5 feet with flood panels. So all of the openings at that level will have to be designed so that flood panels can be attached in the jams.
So you in your notes, and this is for the next stage, but it calls for wood panels down there. Is that what the flood panels or flood controls would go on top of?
So they would sit in front of the paneling. So we would design, we probably use what are called flood logs, and they would span between like the brick jams in front of. So the intent is for those openings at the ground level to be nice and deep. That way we can totally bypass that wood paneling.
And I know we're talking about details that would be at the next level, but you put it on your plan, so that would be from about 3 feet down where those wood panels are roughly.
Yeah, usually. I would probably make it 2.5 feet, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
And just to confirm quickly, there is a small lot at the back end of the parcel that is not in the scope of the project, right at Nassau and UG.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, we don't have any ownership of it, that the ownership hasn't expressed intent to acquire it. But yeah, it's a vacant lot right now.
Any other questions? Not, we will move on to public comment on this item, should there be any.
Good afternoon, I'm Lisa Jones, Historic Charleston Foundation. We have reviewed the applicant's request for conceptual approval of a new hotel at 245 UG Street. We appreciate the architect's intention to carry design elements from across the street into new construction and are generally supportive of the application. We also appreciate the applicant's good communication with HCF throughout this process. We did let the applicant know that we would prefer to see a continued pattern of arched windows where the lone circular window faces the corner. We also recommended that we increase the cornice on the top floors and add ornamentation to help highlight the arches. See the people's building as a reference. We appreciate your consideration of these comments. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kevin Eberly. I live up in the Uptown in Hampton Park Terrace, just nearby this. And I pass by the building, or the site at least, just about every day, so I have sort of an interest in it. So I think Steve is obviously a very capable architect and does a lot of very nice projects. And he sort of referred to this as two buildings and how it should be thought of as two sort of buildings. I 100% agree with that. And the one on the right in the picture in front of you, I think is fine. The corner building, I think is fine. Though I do have a problem with the much more massive one on the left. And the reason that I'm concerned about it is, had that project been submitted to the board by itself as a standalone building, I think the same comment would be heard over and over by the public, which is it's really bland. And Steve's described the window pattern, for example, as calm, which is maybe a positive spin on that. But I really feel like the overall impact is like looking at a sheet of print paper and has no real focus. The lobby and the main entrance to the hotel is the central door there. I don't know if, I guess I can't flip back on the slides to get a more frontal view of the building, but I really feel like it's missing a great opportunity. Thank you very much. I feel like it's missing a great opportunity. Yeah, oops. Yes, I feel like it's missing a great opportunity to do literally anything to emphasize the main entrance. And just, I thought I would bring along maybe some pictures of maybe, I think, more apt comparisons. This is the Gray Star building on Meeting Street. And what I think is interesting about it is on the Meeting Street side, I mean, it looks nice on both sides, but on the Meeting Street side, the long side of the building, it has a very marked entrance that really highlights that side of the building. And historically, I think this is even a better example. This is the old Roper Hospital. In that photo, you can see that the secondary street, which is Lucas Street, still, even though it's a secondary street, still has a very prominent, distinct entrance compared to the Calhoun Street side. So while this hotel maybe would be said to reflect more of like a Meeting Street location, UG Street really deserves more. And that's especially true because the city of Charleston is right now planning, at least they say, a reworking of UG Street to improve the walkability of it, sidewalks, that kind of thing, which really don't exist in that section of UG Street right now. So I would just like to see a better relationship to UG Street with some sort of more prominent central emphasis to really distinguish that side, which I feel like it's lacking right now.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Catherine Alexander, the Preservation Society of Charleston. We appreciate the applicant meeting with us on this proposal. For the record, we do want to state that we opposed the expansion of the accommodations overlay to include this site in 2019 as part of our ongoing advocacy to regulate impacts of hotel growth. But now that we are at this point, we're glad to see the design starting in a strong place. While located in a 412 height district, this property is also directly across the street from the circa 1920 Grant homes, which have been placed under landmark overlay status by the city council. Efforts to relate to these small scale buildings with the lower mass fronting Meeting Street are successful, as is the relief created along the streetscape by the recessed covered dining area. Similarly, we would encourage more gracious setbacks and articulation along UG Street to promote a similar dynamic ground floor activation experience and opportunity for green space. Shifting to the top of the building, we commend the creative approach to mechanical screening. This design does, however, create a taller roof form, and we encourage reducing the ceiling height of the penthouse to mitigate the overall height to the greatest extent possible. Lastly, looking beyond the conceptual level, we do have reservations about the selection of stucco as the primary material for the larger section of the building from a performance and longevity standpoint. To maintain the desired contrast, a lighter brick would be a higher quality option. So we thank you for taking our comments into consideration as the project moves forward.
Okay. Any further public comment? Seeing no movement, we'll go to city staff comments, recommendation.
Sure, and we are gonna start just with some factual table setting. So the proposed hotel design is known to UP and received revised BZAZ accommodation special exception approval on April 1st, so just recently. It is in the 412 height district, which has a non-residential ground floor maximum of 20 feet per ordinance. And the applicant is requesting a 25-foot ground floor exception by the BAR. In addition, staff also noted that there is a double height 23-foot ballroom on the second floor. The interim zoning director determined that no additional approvals or review are required for the ballroom height, as it is a de minimis part, is eloquent phrasing, not mine, of the second and third floor plans. Staff appreciate the overall design choices and detailing of this project, with the architectural direction affirming many of the 2017 BAR principles for new construction and renovations and repairs. There is a clearly articulated base, middle, and top, and the base is taller and proportionately appropriate to the building. The base also uses scaling devices like awnings, transoms, and divided light windows. The ground floor, particularly on the Meeting Street side with the inclusion of the covered porch, supports street life on the sidewalk. Thus, staff support the request for a 25-foot ground floor. The principal facades on Meeting Street and UG Street have a vertical orientation, which reinforces Charleston's visual character. The choice of materials is authentic in their appearance and function, and the architectural language of the building is legible. Staff support the height scale mass of this proposal in what is a varied and changing context. The 4-story Meeting Street volume mediates between the smaller Grant homes and the larger volumes of the new apartments across Meeting Street. On the 8-story UG Street volume, staff particularly appreciates the hipped roof with a mechanical well at the top, which screens the mechanicals from view from the elevated highway connecting to the Ravenel Bridge and gives a nice presence to how the building meets the sky. Staff recommend the applicant restudy the oculus to have a different divided light pattern than the normative one on the Meeting Street volume to give it more hierarchy and separation from the windows below. And or if a divided light pattern is preferred, to have one of the arched windows on the chamfered corner instead. The second floor windows on the Meeting Street volume appear larger than those on the ground floor. While that gives a sense of piano nobile to the design, staff encourage additional detailing in the second floor fenestration to bring their scale down. For example, the transoms employed on the UG Street ground floor fenestration could be a scaling element already in use in the design. Staff require restudy of how the Meeting Street volume intersects the Hugie Street volume on Hugie Street, and I give reference to the sheets where you can find this condition most clearly. The Meeting Street volume sits uncomfortably close to the first column of windows on Hugie Street. While this is a singular building, it is articulated volumetrically as two buildings, and the connection between the two volumes should express how those two should express those two matchings in a clear and comfortable connection. And right now it feels a little awkward to us. Staff encourage rethinking the use of pickleball on the top of the meeting street volume. While that is use and typically not under our purview, that particular use has aesthetic implications to prevent the balls from entering meeting street. So it's anticipating what physicality would have to happen on the roof if the pickleball.
It would be
use
so
takes
ugly sitting there in the asphalt. Yeah.
Staff conditions are at preliminary, restudy the intersection between the meeting street volume and the Hugie Street volume. And also secondly, study the second floor volume penetration and oculus on the meeting street volume. And staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with board and staff.
Okay, thank you. Any applicant response or clarification?
Well, I appreciate everybody's feedback, especially compliments, but it has been very helpful all along, meeting with city staff, the Preservation Society, Historic Charleston. And Mr. Eberly's comments are all well taken. I think that I do create a simplicity to the architecture, especially in the middle of the buildings, with emphasis on the bottom and the top. So that is something I do. I certainly don't mean to make things bland, so I do. I'll take that comment to heart. And the commentary about a more prominent central entrance, I think that is well taken as well. I like, when possible, to make entrances have a series of 3 openings that are equal. So I kind of saw the entrance as that entire 3-bay facade, but having a little more emphasis in the middle, I think could go a long way. And I think the pickleball comment is well taken. And the stucco comment, I know that materials are generally focused on at preliminary, but being that stucco is a major material we're using here, I would certainly love the board's feedback on that. I like the kind of the 2 different materials and the heaviness and texture that the brick offers, then the smoothness and lightness that the stucco had. So would certainly appreciate any feedback regarding materials. But thank you, everybody.
Okay, great.
So let me ask you one question, Stephen.
Yes.
From the curb at the widest point on Hugie Street back to the face of the building is how wide?
It's always 10 feet. You know, we need to always make sure we maintain a 10-foot sidewalk. So I think at the main entrance where there's parking, it's right at 10 feet. And then I think it becomes about 13 feet at the other locations.
Where the trees there, I guess that would go out more like 18 feet or 20
Yeah, it
feet.
goes out quite a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, you can kind of see it, you know, here that it necks down because we have the recessed parking at the entrance. And we're just kind of pinched on the depth of the site is our most kind of difficult dimension. And because we have parking. But elsewhere on the site, it's more than 10 feet.
Thank you.
Sure.
Board discussion.
I have something to say. I was hoping to listen to you talk first.
Well, I try to hang back a little bit when I'm acting chair, just as
So like Kevin, this is one of my walking routes. And so the thought of walking down that sidewalk and having that first 25 feet right there is, it's imposing, I think. However, when I combine it with the building overall, I don't find it that way. I think when you're walking by there, it will feel that way. I appreciate your context photos. And you looked at that, and you brought some of that forward, and many times that doesn't happen. Appreciate that. you know, the point's been made, if you take that section that's all stucco now, and you just have that there, that would be a structure that would be like many structures that get brought in front of the board and they don't push down the line, but that's not what it is. You have anchored it, and you have created a corner that I find enjoyable, and I appreciate your work on this.
Yeah, I really enjoy the presentation and the design in totality. It's Charleston and neoclassic at the same time. The red brick anchoring the corner of the lot. I think it'll be impressive on the corner in a way that catty corner across the street is also impressive, but with a better design. I appreciate Kevin's comment on the entrance of the building. But I like really what's mimicking almost an arcade there, and I like the symmetry of all of that. But I don't know if I would necessarily make a grander entrance because I like the simplicity of it, but more so focusing on the doors or some sort of signage, not necessarily making the entrance more grand. Excuse me. The bummer with the entrance to parking and that having that lot in the back would have been really nice to be able to pull folks in off of Nassau, but clearly that's just not an option. And to city staff's point, I don't quite understand the hyphen in the back of the building connecting the two and how it relates to the UG Street side. And I think I understand where you're going with it, but to me, it both brings the buildings together and separates the building when looking at the north facade and the south facade. But whether you're going down Meeting Street or getting onto the bridge, I think this is going to be a really nice project for people to see. A good job.
I generally agree with a lot of staff's comments, which are generally supportive, and of the kind of board comments that have been presented here. I think, as I think about just starting with certain elements of the building, the 25-foot, first story. Typically what we'd see, is buildings elevated, and the pedestrian experience elevated as it engaged to the street. And again, I believe, as Mr. Ramos pointed out, that's 5 feet, that would generally be elevated at this point, bringing it back to 20. And so I would prefer to see, while whole openings, the engagement at the street level and the way the openings have been detailed to mitigate the flood concerns here, and the engagement at the street level seems to be a much more successful strategy to me. I think there's a variety of elements in this building that seem to be at this level being balanced fairly well. The 4-story element and the comments that Seaton's made, the way that continues down to create the 1-story element. There are awnings at those arched openings that call out, extend out over the street and highlight that as the entrance, and the simplicity of that I think is helpful, given that there's also a lot of other elements that are being balanced in here. The punched openings of the 2 book wings versus the kind of assembly windows in the center, the way that engages with the parapet. There's a lot of moves, and to add additional moves in there too gives me a little bit of pause because they're being balanced fairly well right now. I think I would agree with staff's point about the way that the 4-story element engages with the 7-story element. I think there's a way that intersection can be detailed to be kind of a cleaner junction. And I believe that can be developed as this project moves forward. The taller windows at the 2nd floor kind of remind me of the Masonic Lodge, the tall elements on that piano nobly. Now there's a hierarchy in those windows that are vertically oriented. So I do think Steve's comment about having some sort of distribution in that, whether it's a vertical element that's getting some hierarchy right now, they're just, the verticals and the horizontals are all the same. And that's being translated to the other windows. I think that there's some refinement that can happen at a later point, but the height of them doesn't bother me. I do think in the brick, I know that there were some points brought forth about detailing and how that comes. A lot of the historic examples such as building on Meeting Street, it's the Wagner building. It has a level of detail in the depth of that facade that I think is really important. And I would hope that those details would get refined and brought more forward rather than reduced, because while I think some of the larger moves are keeping it simple, I think the detailing in some of those decisions are it's where you'll see a lot of the success of this project, whether that be, you know, the cornice or the detail around the arches. But I think those are kind of some of my initial thoughts.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Steve one more time?
Sure thing.
So going back to the sidewalk and the elevation of the sidewalk versus the road, is your elevations right now are determined, you start at the elevation of the road, then you go up, whatever, 6 inches, 7 inches of sidewalk. There's maybe a grade that's going up to the entry into the building, but, and then it's a slab on the inside. Is there a step up there at all?
Not right now, I mean, yes, so you hit the nail on the head, we're kind of limited by what we can do from the curb, we slope up the sidewalk as much as we can. We have to kind of pick the lowest point on the site to kind of slope up from. But yeah, we're not intending to have any step up. And certainly wish the site was higher. But yeah, we don't have the ability to really elevate the dirt. And we want to keep the pedestrian experience at sidewalk. So it all be, that's why we're handling the flood panels.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking about though is, again, my feet get wet a lot there when walking that street if it's raining. So you've thought about just normal heavy rain activity gonna happen at that site if that first floor is not raised any more than the grade of the sidewalk down to the curb and then the road. Studied that.
It's an ongoing discussion. The one benefit we have is that Hugie streetscape is built out. Currently, there's no sidewalk, there's no curb in a lot of the areas, so we've been in discussions with JMT Civil Engineering that's doing that work. It'll happen about the same time as this project, so I'm optimistic that with a slight elevation of the existing sidewalk, as well as the Hugie Street pump station that's under construction now, that ponding that you've discussed will be mitigated. But it's certainly something that's on our mind for sure.
I guess, I'm sure, I guess that it's interesting. If you get under construction and then that sidewalk outside is elevated because of the planned elevation of the road, I don't know how the hierarchy works, but you know, you're starting at that curve elevation and there's a pitch that you pick going up to that entrance and I mean, I was just thinking about that after your comment. I didn't think about that before now, and that's seems risky.
I would imagine that'd be the sort of thing that TRC is going to be invested in, because it's the same stormwater and traffic transportation personnel that are working on streetscape improvements are sitting at the table reviewing this. One would hope there'd be coordination. I'll add just very briefly, I agree with what my fellow board members have said. I think that, you know, the Oculus window, the second floor windows for this brick mass have gotten a little bit of attention. And I think that you may just need to loosen up a little, become a little more playful, because you put a round window in a building, you gotta have a sense of humor. And so I think, you know, let that be the looser, smaller cousin. And I had pointed out too that you know, you've scripted this to appear as though it's two buildings. They're overlapping at their joint and they should be abutting, you know, like what other people are saying. And also, the stucco is going to get a lot of scrutiny at preliminary because, you know, we're presuming it's stucco on frame. And it's a lot of stucco. And, you know, as other people have articulated, that's become a quite difficult material, you know, and definitely need to make sure that you depict all the construction joints that you're in, and all the control points that are, you know, endemic to stucco on frame need to show up so that we can understand how they might impact the quality of the facade. And that's all I'll say, and I'll entertain a motion. If anyone has one.
And so I can't believe, I almost never do this, but I got one more thing, just,
Oh, yeah.
but I like it. And I'm with you on the comment about stucco, but it's gonna be interesting to see how that exterior appearance is influenced by the infrastructure of mechanical vents, exhausts, throughout the building on the outside, all the different interruptions. It looks so clean. I mean, it is what it is.
I can speak to that briefly.
Go ahead.
One of the nice things about hotels is.
Steve, you might, just because the viewers at home who have their popcorn wanna
Yes.
be able to.
All four of them.
My kids, my kids. I said, one of the nice things about hotels is we generally can get 99% of those vents to the roof, as opposed to apartments where wash, dryer, the range, they need to go sidewall directly out. So I'm not saying there won't be any vents. I think we'll have some louvers at the ground level associated with the garage, but I really don't anticipate much at the middle stories.
Great. Okay. Any further comments or motion?
I'll motion
Okay.
for conceptual approval with board and staff comments and conditions.
Okay, we have a motion of Mr. Brown, conceptual approval with board and staff comments. Do I have a second?
I'll say it.
Go down the roll. Trent, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Brown,
Yea in favor.
Metters, I vote likewise, the motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Okay, 562 meeting.
So 562 meeting, also known as Meeting Street Manor by those of us locally, is not rated circa the 1930s in the historic corridor district. An applicant is requesting conceptual approval of exterior facade alterations on 6 affordable housing buildings. And we'll show you the location. And then we'll be ready for applicant presentation.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chelsea Thomas. I'm with Mosley Architects. I am here today with Pete Sherman. He's the Director of Development with the Charleston Housing Authority. And Meeting Street Manor is a project that is in the 500 block of Meeting Street, just south of the project we just saw. Today we are talking about the block that is immediately adjacent to Meeting Street. It is 6 apartment buildings. This building was built, or these buildings were built in the late 1930s, and it was the first public housing complex in the city of Charleston. They are simple brick 1- and 2-story buildings. They over time have been altered with the replacement of the original roof with asphalt shingles and the replacement of the original multi-light steel windows with modern vinyl replacement windows. They've also been painted. The original finish was a whitewash. You will also notice in some pictures that there used to be concrete fuel boxes on the rear porches. They are no longer in place. Those are just some notable changes since the original construction. Here are some historic photos of the development near completion in the 30s. The Sanborn map, it says Cooper River Court, but I've always referred to this block as Meeting Street Manor. And it was the first of many blocks that were developed in this area. The later Cooper River Courts, I believe, were in the 50s and 60s. Here's an aerial view of this block. And some photos along Meeting Street Manor looking east. Here's some representative photos of the buildings in this block. This is one of the buildings, the longer buildings. This is B3, we call it. It's in a green color. There's 3 different colors throughout the site currently. B4 across from B3. These buildings, the entrances of the buildings face the interior courtyard instead of the street. So you'll see it's kind of hard to see, but in the bottom right, you'll see like a copper bell curved roof. This is M2. This building was originally designed and operates as an administrative building. However, the interior of the building does not reflect how it was originally designed on the original plan set. It really carries almost, none of the original layout. So you'll see that we are planning to convert this to badly needed accessible units. And one is across from M2, the other building that's on Meeting Street. Go back one more. The roofs were recently replaced. So we are leaving those in place. This is the scope of demolition. It's really, we're just replacing a lot of this material in kind or, repairing in kind. So we propose replacing the windows and the attic louvers, the entry doors to the units. The interiors will undergo a significant rehabilitation. And there are some wood stair handrails at the entry stairs that are in pretty bad disrepair that we will be replacing as well with wooden railings. Throughout the site, we'll be replacing select sidewalks and pavement. And at building M2, there is a ramp, but it is not conforming with accessibility requirements, so we will be replacing that.
Yeah.
These are just some demolition plans showing the removal of items in red. I'll flip through these fairly quickly.
So Chelsea, I want to interrupt you just a minute and make sure that I say now, I'm going to recuse myself on this one because I was unable to read any of the notes on the plans. If you zoom in them on your iPad or, and I tried to several different ways, but I was unable to do it.
Okay.
And I should have taken the time to come in and look at the actual plans, but I didn't. So I just wanted to say that, guys.
Well, I don't think that warrants a recusal per se, because you don't have a conflict of interest, but you could certainly,
You could abstain from
Abstain
voting.
from the
but it wouldn't be
vote.
a recusal.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
This is the proposed site plan. Our civil and landscape architect are Stephen Whiteside. We are proposing a new playground in the central courtyard. Some drainage improvements and landscaping. So here are the key renovation items that I wanted to highlight. We are, as we mentioned before, windows and attic louvers. We propose to replace the windows. They are existing vinyl windows, single hung, 1/1. We are proposing to replace the windows with a vinyl simulated divided light window. The original drawings had an add alternate in them for wood windows, so we would like to match the pattern of the windows that were elevated in those original drawings. And we'd also like to replace the entry doors of the units with a half light door or something that relates back to the original doors as well. Where I believe we're proposing a fiberglass door, so to mimic the wooden doors that were originally there. We are doing a substantial rehabilitation of the interior to modernize the unit. As I mentioned before, we are replacing the stair handrails on the exterior porches with a simple wood railing. We are replacing gutters and downspouts, and as you will see later in the presentation, we are proposing to build roofs on the rear porches that were originally in the plans and in the design, but never were constructed. This will actually help us with drainage, roof drainage, to get the water away from the rear facades of the buildings. Currently, they don't have gutters and downspouts because there's no place to put a gutter and a downspout. The porch will help bring the water away from the building, the main building, and to the edge of the porch, because the porches are the full length of the building. At the site, we are doing select sidewalk and pavement repairs, new playground accessibility improvements, and screening for trash and mechanical units, et cetera. And at building M2, we are providing a new ramp. We have had a review due to our HUD financing and RAD conversion with the SHPO. It's called Section 106 review, and they have been reviewing these drawings with us for a while. And some of the things they've commented on are the windows. We've discussed our plan to provide hung windows with SHPO. Deleted openings, we agreed to provide like a recessed brick infill to give the impression of the opening that we had to remove for a layout change on the interior. Railings, we revised the design a little bit to provide a more simplistic wood railing per their comment. And at the M2 building, we've talked through, how we deal with the change of use with them, and I think we are getting close to a, consensus on that. As long as we leave the window openings in place, even with the new layouts of the units, we can address that from the inside and try to maintain that fenestration pattern on the front of the buildings, especially.
Ms. Thomas, you're at about 8.5 minutes. I'm assuming you might need more time since you haven't gotten to the drawings yet. Another 5?
Sure, but
Okay. Okay, you can beat it, then great.
Yes, okay, great. These are the proposed floor plans for all of the buildings. These are just the overall building plans with the units shown. Roof plans. And the elevations. Some sections of the existing building structure and some details. And some enlarged stair and ramp details to just give a feel for what we are proposing. And this is my final slide. This is just a perspective showing the M1 and the M2 building. On the left is the existing, in the red is what we are removing and replacing. On the right is the proposed elevations. We are showing the N1 building with a railing all the way around the porch. It doesn't currently exist because it does hit that 30-inch above grade threshold, and existing building code says we should be putting railings there for the safety of residents. Okay, I think that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Great. All right, any questions to the applicant about the board or staff? Okay.
So I'm sorry, one question. What's the material for you're replacing wood for wood when it comes to the guardrails?
Yes. There are a few pipe rails out there we're gonna get rid of and replace with wood as well.
Which buildings are those?
back to the elevations.
In one,
You can see that it's kind of blurry here, but this would be a wood railing on this building. The pipe railings are,
yeah, yeah.
I believe B3 has the pipe railing.
And that you're replacing with wood.
Yes, exactly. I'm not doing it. I'm sorry.
And SHPO recommended wood, or what was that conversation?
Yes, SHPO recommended a simple wood railing. We were considering or a pre-finished aluminum railing to mimic a wood railing, but they recommended wood instead. And we had discussed using kind of a similar detail to what's currently out there, which is pretty simple.
Thank you.
I have one other quick question. The structure, is it masonry structure with a wood stud inside, or is it a wood structure with the masonry veneer?
It's actually neither. It is very interesting. I'm trying to get back to that section. Where is that section?
Did review that. It was a little hard.
The exterior walls are a clay tile bearing wall with a brick masonry veneer. The floors are concrete with a concrete beam that goes down the center of each building, and the roofs are wood framed. The concrete porches are actually kind of integral to the buildings themselves. They tie right into the floor slabs.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment on this application?
Hey, Kevin Everly again, as long as I was here, I thought I'd go ahead and chime in about this one too. In particular, in defense of the original windows, obviously they've been removed. The vinyl windows are certainly not gonna win any beauty contest, but it seems like a real lost opportunity to go back with what we know are the originals. And I had the same problem that James did, trying to zoom in and read anything in that micro print. So I'm not totally sure what the final plans called for, but best I could tell, the aging eyesight was some sort of like 2/2 windows, which I think would look really bad, even worse than the vinyl 1/1 windows. And so I brought along these are some photos from 1937 that highlight the original sealed casement windows, which are really very interesting. The way that they're designed, it's well, I'll pass these around, but it's casement windows with actually a thin set of panes on both the left and the right. So it's 24 total panes in the setup, as opposed to the 16 that I guess has been proposed. So I'll just kind of pass these around, but these are the photos. You can see the windows. In fact, the first one shows the casement windows open. And I think that would be a lot more attractive if the original plans exist, and I presume they do, and show 2/2 as an alternate. Obviously, they were rejected by somebody for some reason. Samuel Lapham perhaps as the architect, but it seems like this would be a great opportunity to reintroduce an original element, as long as the work is being done. I think it'd be more attractive for sure.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, we'll move on to city staff comments and recommendations.
As noted by the applicant, we are looking at the portion of Meeting Street Manor that is just in the historic corridor district. The renovation of the residential buildings, as noted by applicant, will require the removal of exterior attic louvers, doors, crawl space access panels, stair handrails, and non-historic windows for their replacement. Staff aligned with SHPO in affirming the proposed window placement. The stair handrail replacement required by code, that part being new. Everything else is, in kind repair or replacement. Providing the brick infill where needed and whitewashing of the exterior of the residential buildings. Staff also aligned with SHPO on building M2 and leaving fenestration in place, and also needing to kind of do that ramp for ADA access as well. We support the building of the rear porch roofs that were included in the original historic design but never constructed. And we support all other renovations and repairs of the building as noted in the application to include the select sidewalk and pavement areas that will be removed and repaired. Staff conditions are that any changes in the scope of the renovations, no matter how small, must come back to the BAR for review. And that our recommendation is conceptual approval with board and staff conditions with preliminary and final review by staff.
Any applicant response to that or public comment?
I just want to say I appreciate the comments about the windows. And I don't have any further comments at this time. I wanted to thank everyone.
Board discussion.
I have a quick question for the board and staff before we started. Looking at the vinyl windows, and I think I read fiber cement on the underside of the roofs, like what, being that I'm relatively new to the board, what has been the general board stance and staff position on vinyl windows? I know that that's what's existing here, but not typically something we see. And, you know, cementitious materials on a.
Yeah, if those things have already been replaced or prior to this review, that we can't mandate their return. If they were existing windows, the original ones, in other words, that's why the reference to non-historic windows. If the historic windows were there, then we would want them repaired and only replaced if they were in such bad condition they could not be repaired.
And of the applicant too, when I zoomed in really far to the drawings here, I saw 4/4 windows. Is that what you're proposing to put in these double hung windows? So that it is a basically per set 16 light configuration?
There's different sizes of windows and each one has its own set of, divisions, but what we were trying to do is follow the original construction drawings that had the wood window, divided light windows as an alternate. So, yeah, whatever they were showing in the plans there, we were mimicking.
And the only thing I would add, Joel, in terms of this is as an affordable housing project, we have a special mandate based on a resolution from 2023, to support that work happening in the city. In whatever way.
Well, thank you for the clarification. That's what it's.
Okay. Any other board discussion?
I do think the addition of the porches off the rear is nice. I mean, as a residential space to create an outdoor area, I mean, is definitely a benefit. And especially that it might have been a part of the plan. I think adding that is a nice feature to put back on. As a general layout question, I know this isn't something for us to discuss. Existing demolition and proposed makes it much easier to review the application. It took me a really long time jumping back and forth between the drawings in order to understand what specifically was going on or being requested. Typically, it's a lot more beneficial to be able to see what's specifically changing in there, but it does seem like in a lot of the configurations, there's an attempt made to prove, the existing layouts that are there.
I agree with staff's comments and their recommendation. Any other board comment? Not. I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion for conceptual approval, incorporating board and staff comments.
Okay.
And final review by staff.
Okay, we have a motion made by Mr. Trantham for conceptual approval with board and staff comments and final review by staff. Do I have a second for that?
I'll second.
All right, we'll go down the row, actually. Mr. Trantham,
You in favor?
Mr. Brown,
You in favor?
Mr. Metters,
Abstain.
abstaining. I will vote for, so this motion does carry with 3 votes for. It might seem ridiculous to ask the people that made the motion if they vote for the motion, but I sat in a school board meeting where the exact opposite happened. Yeah, oh yeah. District superintendent is like, madam, you're voting against the motion, but you made the. Yeah.
I was just gonna get things moving.
I don't think we'd really go there. Just- Okay, 162 Ashley Avenue.
162 Ashley Avenue is new construction in Height District 8530 in the Old City District, and they are requesting conceptual approval of an apartment building with ground level retail. We're going to show you where this is located. And then we will be ready for the applicant presentation.
Thank you all. Good evening. Jeffrey Rendering with L Street P. Appreciate you being here today and your comments. We submitted back in February and a meeting with y'all and were deferred. It was a great conversation, great discussion. We kind of pulled all the staff and board comments, which you can see on the left side here. And we actually just highlighted, color coded, and they basically repeated themselves and came across about 6 main comments, which you'll see on the right there, that kind of consolidated comments. So mainly talking about the height and its relationship to the 2-story residential Charleston singles to the north of us, and obviously the 7-story parking to the south of us. The Dowdy Street or north elevation, just articulation of that facade. There's this conversations about material study, the use of brick, the poly ash material that we had on the building and called out previously. There were some comments on the porch, mainly it's about clarity on where the extent hit. It was kind of hitting some windows, but the elevations were correct, but the renderings kind of showed that off a little bit. So we did make some updates to the porch as well. And also resolving the top, there were some comments about a cornice, obviously the height difference between the 2 masses that you'll see. So there was some more work done there. And then an ADA intervention. So we were asked to kind of restudy that ADA access to the site. There's some other challenges that came across over the last couple of weeks that we've been studying. So those actually changed how we approach the ADA access to our site. So you'll see these comments repeated on the images forthcoming with the rendering comparisons to show you what we're going to talk about each slide. We also wanted to take a moment to kind of redo some of our diagrams just to really help articulate maybe a little bit clearer. We said a lot of things last time, maybe we didn't show enough diagramming to show how the constraints on the site that we're dealing with. But again, like BD just mentioned, we're MU2 8530. We have a 40-foot setback from the right of way to any conditioned structured building, which is definitely different from our 2 neighbors. They are closer to the street than we can be. The program is broken down, as she mentioned, retail on the ground floor. The second level will be apartment style living and housing, and then the upper 5 stories on top of that will be more like dorm style housing. So we did treat these a little bit differently in plan and what kind of access they have. Next, for those, Mr. Trotton, I know you're new here. I'm not sure if you've heard the last one, but we are in AE 11 zone, so we have to be at 13 elevation. Unfortunately, our site is around 4.25 elevation along the street. So we have a significant height to deal with there for FEMA, and then in that area, as we kind of know that there's a lot of everyday flooding, sunny day flooding in that zone. So we are looking at building a plinth, bringing up 6 feet. Per zoning, we're also allowed to add that to our height to our building. So technically we could be 91 feet high. Our adjacent building parapet, the closest to the street, is at 83 feet. We wanted to call that out. So we then started breaking down our mass from there. So the first step was really start to articulate the ground floor, the ground 2 levels, really the lower 2 levels, and how they relate to the Charleston single. Since we can't get close to the street, we actually pulled out that mass and an unconditioned space that you'll see as a porch element, and we shifted that to the north. And that starts to relate to the height of the piazza of the Charleston single itself. Next, the transformer. This is the new item that we might receive some comments from you all about, but unfortunately, we only have 1 street-facing facade. We did explore in the previous design, we did not have this transformer in this location. We were hopeful that we could get in the back of the building to have different easements and accesses, work with Dominion. That was not going to be possible. It needed to be placed along Ashley. And so that did cut short our porch, and we obviously have to keep that clear above that so you'll start to see that in the architecture. But I actually really think it actually helped our design a little bit more clarity of the massing. Next, as you can notice from that white block above the third step there, it was very much too wide. It's not very Charleston proportions. So we broke that down into 1/3, 2/3. And the light pink that you see there really acts as this grounding element, the grounding mass that then starts to wrap into the porch, which you'll see in the renderings. This starts to reference the character and style of MUSC that's adjacent to us, just how MUSC kind of anchors this neighborhood. It kind of anchors this building. And the left 2/3 then starts to speak to the Charleston singles, this smaller residential, and its massing window fenestration patterns and material. And the last kind of big move, obviously we were at the 91 feet that we were showing you. We're not going to be that tall. We've been pushing down as far as we can on this project to get as low as we can, as we heard from y'all, and get this thing shorter and start to respond to that garage height and also genuflect down to the Charleston singles. So pushing down, we did lower the parapets. You'll notice that we did lower the parapets down as much as we can. And we kind of have a 3-step process here. Obviously the mass, the MUSC is the tallest mass. We step down with that residential number 2. And then the last step would be that porch element that does jut out to the north to start to reference the Charleston single heights. And we'll kind of dive into that further. And obviously the kind of the final, just starting to talk about the fenestration patterns and bringing a porch element and a garden into that plinth. Okay, so hopefully, you can zoom in here, but hopefully you can see well enough. So this is the view from the horseshoe. So we're standing across the street looking at our property here. We did want to start rendering just the context next to us, just to start to help our building not blend right into the garage, since it won't be a white garage. But height-wise, again, this comment about trying to lower the parapets. So the white brick mass that you see on the right side, that parapet was lowered about 2 feet. And we really latched on a comment I think was made by Ms. Subchuck at the very end of the last meeting about this idea of a drop cornice and then stepping back to parapet. And that's what we really try to latch on and achieve in that lower mass. So that's the left mass there. You kind of see this cornice detail right below the text there, really showing you how that parapet is stepping back as far as we can really take it. That actually starts tucking back behind the parapet of the brick mass itself. And this really starts to hide that height. We're doing slope roofs here to gutters or sorry, not gutters, but to downspouts. That also allows us to reduce the height of our parapets to achieve a little bit lower there. You kind of saw the previous slide here, but it's kind of hard to see. We'll talk about transformer and some of the other images, but just kind of want to point it out. That won't work. So the transformer is located in the southwest corner of our site here. Again, this cannot have anything above it. It has to have 40-foot clear above. Since our building is so far set back per zoning from the street, we couldn't also put the transformer inside of the building. Dominion was not comfortable driving onto our site to access that. And so we kind of tucked in as far as we could. And we actually, as you'll see, we took the plinth material, that porch material, and just extended it. And I think it really blends in really well and actually hides it. And I think the massing actually resolves itself a little bit cleaner than it was. So we really appreciate some of y'all's comments about the brick material as well. I think it really helped out. Next, you'll see that porch element, that nighttime shot. The other thing we wanted to look at was the porch. We heard some comments of it feeling maybe too industrial, too heavy. It didn't feel like it was maybe light enough. It did really dark in the previous scheme there, as you can see. Some things what we did here was to start to articulate the column structure a little bit cleaner. We brought a lot of precedent, if you're not familiar, but with the Circular Congregational Church, it is a local church down meeting. So it's down a little bit towards our office, actually. It's tucked away. You kind of have to walk through their garden to find it, but it's beautiful design. But those columns are pulled apart, and you can start to see air and space between them, so it really lightens that up. We felt like we felt the single really well. Also, the ADA, because of the location of the transformer, we originally had the ramp sloping up on that south side where we really feel like the main traffic is going to flow from. But we relocated that and actually used a chair lift in this little recessed entry element there. And so we started to carve away that base and plinth and really invite people to step into that porch element to access those stairs and chair lift. Next, this is the view coming up from Ashley. Again, you start to see the lower parapet heights. It really starts to read visually shorter than the garage itself. due to its setback from the street, and it's only about 2 foot difference in height at best at this point. So it starts to read, it starts to step that down. And to the comment about the brick material change, BD, I think that was a great comment by the city staff. Before, the porch kind of really interrupted the low base from the upper mass. By pulling the porch over, continuing the same material up, it starts to make a clean articulation of that kind of grounding element of the brick. And then we highlighted that area there with that special window. So looking into retail, we wanted to frame that out and create that as a little special intervention there that starts to line up with the vertical windows above it. You'll also notice the windows changed from the siding material on the north mass. We had a 2-height kind of move. Didn't feel very residential, even though that's what we were trying to achieve. So we started breaking those down into single punch windows, using kind of extruded frame to get extra depth a little bit that you wouldn't necessarily get. You're not in brick facades. So we wanted to bring extra depth. And here you can start to see how that porch plinth material just continues out and wraps and hides the transformer. I think one last comment I would make on this one, you can start to see that brick base detail. Since it is one big brick move, we wanted to start articulating that base separately. So we're starting to play with the texture and patterning of brick. So we have an alternating reveal course at the base only, followed by 3 courses of stacked headers, which is the same detail we have at the top of the cornice as we do at that bottom panel, that line through the porch itself.
Jeffrey, I'm
Yes, sir.
imagining you might need a couple more minutes.
Oh,
Where-
sorry,
where
yes,
is
I
it?
could.
Okay.
We're got like 1 more slide or 2 slides. And then the north elevation here, looking at Dowdy. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's reading very well on the screen, but we started breaking down that facade with reveals. Those will be our downspout locations. And so they are tucked in into a kind of metal recessed area, splitting up that facade into 4 vertical sections. Now material is transferring, or will not be poly ash. We're starting to look at other siding materials, maybe like a horizontal metal that has some articulation to it. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any questions of the applicant by the board or staff?
Yes. Jeffrey,
Yes, sir.
the first one's just a statement. I like to see precedent photos and that whoever on your team went back in behind Circular Congregational Church to the back right-hand corner, which nobody even knows exists
Yeah.
behind that. That little building's wonderful. So that's really
Thank you.
Where was the lift before?
So before, we did not have a lift, but we did have a ramp. So you can see here, the site does slope up as it goes towards the garage entry, the pedestrian garage entry. And so we were using that, helping us on the slope of the ramp. So, so you kind of ramped up on that south side and turned into the port.
I thought that was right. I thought I may have just
Yeah,
missed it, but if you go to slide 8. So in the previous, there's a staircase going up at the northwest corner.
Sir.
And now you describe it as like the cutting off of that corner.
Mhm.
But what you see is stairs starting from the north going up to the south. And then that's the lift straight in front of you right there.
That's correct, yes. Yeah. Yeah, we're being really selective in what kind of lift we can have that would really house all the mechanisms within a shroud. Be really clean, simple.
Jeffrey, do you want to maybe just switch to the plan really quick, just to make sure that was really clear to everybody?
Yeah,
to
sure.
See that, so point out where the lift is.
The best
so
way
now
to
we
do it is
carved-
on that sheet, sheet 8, I think it is. Page 8, that
Yeah.
really shows it well.
Yeah.
Right. Those two.
So that's your.
Any other questions?
Another quick question. I know that this is probably more of a preliminary question, but the drawings seem to show that the downspouts on the north elevation are green. Is that just the images coming out as an odd image? Or are you proposing the slits inside of each one of those buildings to have a green element inserted?
We are exploring using the color, whatever that color may be, green, or if we're gonna study other colors, to kind of move through preliminary, potentially beyond those spouts as well, to start to help divide that facade up. be a little feature.
Okay. If there are no other questions, then we will move on to public comment.
My name is Scott Bluestein. My wife and I own 166 and 168 Ashley. Nobody even contacted us about this proposal. Nobody. We found out about it when I got an email a few hours ago that there was this massive building going up right next to our two historical structures that we worked with MUSC to put back into a residential building, two residential buildings. This is no way to conduct business. None. You need to go to the property owners and let us know what is going to go on. This is trial by ambush, attack by ambush. So let's talk about what we got here. Let's go to slide number 8, if we can push it back. Okay, we've got two houses, here and here. Look how small they are in comparison to this massive structure that is modern. Way too high. You can look on these little maps, models, you can look at it. It's massive. It blocks out the light. You've got something that looks like Bourbon Street with this porch. It's out of context with this neighborhood. Absolutely out of context. Look at the size height. Their porch comes almost up to our second-story roof. Should not be here in a residential area. MUSC asked for us. That was the condition of the sale of those two buildings, to put those back into residential units. And you're taking that away from this area. Where are they going to park? Not enough parking in this area. You're not parking in the MUSC parking garage overnight. It costs too much money. There's no more parking on the street in this area. There's no parking for these people. There's no parking for the businesses that are going to be on this first floor. Where are they going to park? In our parking lot right here. Why do we have a gravel parking lot? I would have loved to pave that gravel parking lot so I didn't have to put down gravel every other year. Why didn't we pave that parking lot? Because it floods regular basis.
Okay, sir,
So that's.
excuse me, sir?
Yes.
Had you been here for this beginning of the meeting, you would have heard me tell the audience that there are certain topics that are beyond our consideration. They're outside of our purview. Parking, flooding, traffic, noise, students, and the like, any livability concern are not part of our purview here. We really can't hear those voiced. Now, I understand your frustration not being informed of this, but I'm sure that according to city ordinances, this property was posted in accordance with the law. And it's been posted now twice. This is the second time we've heard this project. As I said, I agree. I completely sympathize with your frustration over this application. This application is before us tonight because it does conform to the height districts that apply to this property. So its height is not really much of a debate for us. Now, we did
All right, well,
discuss
let's
that
talk
last
about the other things.
You also have a 2-minute limit to your comments, and you have exceeded that. So if you could summarize your concerns quickly.
I think as you look at this project, you're putting a modern building right next to two old historic houses. And you've got all of this traffic that's going to go right around there. You don't know what's going to happen on this porch. Again, that's not what this is all about in this area. You've got the horseshoe across the street. It doesn't fit in. It's too massive and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you for your commentary.
I'm Natalie Bluestein. I'm the other owner of the little single houses right there. And my concerns are a little more practical than my husband's. One, apparently they're talking about raising the building 6 feet, which will cause flooding directly into our homes. I'm very concerned about that as they flood anyway, as my husband has indicated, that whole street floods. That may be beyond everybody's control, but raising it 6 feet next door to us is certainly not going to help. And unless they want to pay to raise our building 6 feet too, it's going to be a huge lawsuit. That's the first thing. The second thing is, in their slide, they've got bicyclists, they've got people going through here. This is our off-street parking, and we do not have an easement for them, and we will not grant one for them. It's parking for our tenants. So they're awfully close to that, and we're not gonna have people encroaching on it, which means we're gonna end up having to put a fence there, which is not gonna be super attractive next to their porch. Those are some practical considerations, but it's also our consideration as homeowners, as property owners. And that's something that had anybody consulted us beforehand, my husband is the registered agent for those properties, we could have talked about it. They could have maybe incorporated something into a design. As it is now, it's going to cause nothing but problems for the rest of the street. There are 2 apartments in each of those 2 buildings, one on each floor. And they're going to be really unhappy tenants, not to mention any damage that's done to our little 100-year-old plus building when they're doing construction next door. And if there are any structural issues, they're going to be paying for it. It's going to be a problem. And it should have been addressed before now. I wish we'd known, but thank you for hearing us.
And Catherine Alexander with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We appreciate the applicant taking our previous feedback into consideration and meeting with us on recent revisions. Efforts to break down the massing on the north elevation are successful, as is the shift to brick on the primary mass. However, the revised proposal does not adequately address previous board direction to reduce the overall height of the structure. While we recognize that the parking garage next door is technically taller, it is critical that the height of the northern mass step down more meaningfully to soften the transition to the 2-story single house next door and the surrounding small scale context. Further, the proposed blade cornice on this mass creates a strange proportion between the top floor windows and the roof line, which we feel points to the larger issue of relying on detailing to reduce the impact of the height of the adjacent neighborhood. So we would just encourage continued study of that for the board's previous directions. Lastly, we understand that the transformer location facing Ashley is not negotiable, but it results in a much less open and continuous ground floor treatment that we do feel warrants for this study as this project is considered moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any further public comment?
Hi, Lisa Jones, Historic Charleston Foundation. I'm not going to take much of your time, but I just want to reiterate the points that Preservation Society just made. We agree with those points and have some concerns about the scale of the building.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sally Bennett, and we bought the worst house on the block on Downing Street, and we're getting ready to embark in a historic restoration of the entire building. Right now, it has 4 apartments. It's basically falling down. There's a facade. The brick is falling down, and from what I understand, we're going to meet with you guys and do everything absolutely right. We can't replace the columns. We have to repair them, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just mind-boggling to me that we're going through all of this to create like something very historical back to its original, and then we're going to get to look out at this monstrosity out our window. It's just upsetting. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to city staff comments and recommendations.
Certainly. The board and staff comments from the previous submittal, which I'll note was in February of this year, that the applicant has addressed to staff satisfaction include incorporating brick as a significant material both on the west elevation and at the base of the building. throughout and using metal wall panels as the other significant elevation material. Breaking down the scale and appearance of the north elevation into smaller parts using breaks in the blade cornice and reveals, which is noted by the applicant contains downspouts on the north facade. Having stronger articulation at the top of the building through the introduction of a blade cornice on the north and northwest facades and stacked soldier brick courses on the west elevation. Resolving inaccuracies in the drawing set as it related to the porch, with the second floor porch terminating in between basic windows down, and restudying the ADA access at the entrance to include a shared entrance with both stair and lift. The board and staff both previously commented on the height of the building in this challenging context as it transitions from large MUSC buildings to the smaller residential grain, with a proposal immediately between a 7-story parking deck and 2-story Charleston single. The applicant has corrected the accuracy of the parking garage height as shown in a variety of context drawings from the previous submission. The applicant has also followed the board's suggestion of providing a lower cornice, a cornice line lower than the parapet behind to reduce the perception of the height from the street. Given that the additional FEMA height allowed to the applicant on this site is 95 feet and 3 inches, and the parapets are 91 and 7 inches and 89 feet and 7 inches respectively, and the blade cornice is 7 feet and 7 inches, staff affirm that they've made a good faith effort to address both board and staff concerns. Staff preferred the porch and window frame color palette in the previous and does not support the introduction of green and encourages a more neutral and timeless selection. Staff understand the difficulty of finding a transformer location that provides truck access from the public right-of-way, given the tightness of the site, and believe extending the expression of the porch plinth to mask the transformer is a reasonable solution given the circumstances. Staff affirm the architectural expression changes to the porch columns based on the precedent aforementioned, as well as other material and detail changes made in the refined expression of the porch. Staff conditions at preliminary, restudy the use of green throughout for an alternative color choice, and continue to refine the detail around the breaks in the blade cornice and associated reveals to make them a little more prominent to aid in the breaking down of the north elevation mass. And we recommend conceptual approval with board and staff conditions.
Okay, thank you. All right, a moment for an applicant response should you desire one.
First off, I'd just like to thank everybody in their comments and coming out tonight. The city's comments for PSC, HCF, and obviously all the evidence nearby. We really appreciate them and take them to heart. One thing I'd just like to add, I mean, it's maybe not necessarily about the design as much as it's about our client, White Line Capital. They are a very local, community-based client. They are working with MUSC directly. They are really encouraged by MUSC to build a affordable, not affordable as in HUD, but affordable as in but residents can and students can pay for it here to address their housing need that MUSC does have. They have developed a parking strategy. They will not be parking on the street. We do have agreements with MUSC to use their lots and their parking spaces for this location. So that will not be also an issue that would cause strife to local residents. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that said, board discussion.
It is an incredibly difficult site, and we look at the staff conditions for approval of the previous presentation here. Number one was to help transition from 7-story parking deck down to a 2-story single house. And number two, the scale and appearance of the north elevation should further be broken down into smaller parts. And, you know, I'm looking at Jeffrey's sheet number. I'm struggling a little bit with it. Let's see here. Oh, maybe it's 9, maybe it's 11. Yeah, that's it. That's it. And I mean, we have four things for restudy. First one is transition from the 7 stories to the 2 stories, and the second one is to break that north elevation down into smaller parts. And I'm at least what I felt when we said that in our conditions was something more than what I see in these photographs. And I'm specifically looking at page 11, the conceptual proposed and the conceptual previous. And you know, I'm not, we're not gonna talk about the zoning issues. That's just not part of our deal, but I thought that we would see more breakdown in that north elevation, something different there. I think that's it.
Okay.
I think coming at it from a fresh perspective, because I was not here at the original one. Mr. Matters, the comment that image is actually the one that I actually was struggling the most with. That I understand that there's breaks in the cornice and that there's reveals where gutters are going down, but it still believes it's a monolithic plant down, or monolithic mass down that elevation, and as it turns around, and it's a highly visible section. Now there's a large building behind that. If you were to take that building away, there's a large tall building behind that, and I understand it. I appreciate y'all's thoughts, and we'll probably listen a little more as you'll make additional comments, but you isolated, I think, the one image that I kind of focused in on is problematic. When I looked at it. I do think there was a lot of attention and things like beneficial developments to the elevation that faces the street. There's a lot of things that like that. Was there further comments until I hear kind of?
Oh, don't be smashed.
First of all, thank you to city staff and for y'all placing the yellow banners at all of the sites where there's going to be a public meeting. I appreciate y'all doing that with plenty of time for people to see it. It's good work, and I know it's a pain, so thank y'all for doing that. Architecturally, do I think it fits with Charleston? No. Do I think that it fits with the medical university and the design that they've developed? Yes. Is it a monolithic structure with a lot of massing? Yes, and so is the parking garage right next to it. I don't think that there's, for the purpose of what the applicant is trying to solve, nothing is ever going to satisfy the connection between the residential neighborhood and the medical university right there to either the applicant or the neighbor's interest. The applicant has achieved many of the requests and conditions that were made from the last deferral. I think with every project, I hope that it would decrease in height. I'm not sure that that's ever going to be something that's resolved while I'm on the board. Thank you in particular for working with the ADA concerns that I had. It's appreciated.
So this 85-30 district, although that's not really subject to our debate, it's, this is the only portion of the city that still has, for the most part, height districts defined by feet. And that's because those were bespoke for the purposes of the medical university. And at its edges, it always creates very awkward transitions back into historic fabric. The good thing about the medical university is that most of the campus used to be in the Ashland River, so you don't have historic fabric to worry about. Here is where it really comes into contact with the old city. And there's not a whole heck of a lot we can do about that unless someone is willing to just forego 3 or 4 stories of construction to mitigate the difference. we don't have the authority as a board to require that of any applicant in this case. And I think some steps have been taken to address our comments before. I think, this elevation is something that I think every one of us has noted. And I would say that it can probably, we can probably ask this applicant to properly address previous staff condition number 2 as they proceed to the next stage of review, taking into consideration all the good comments that have come forth so far.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm hearing you, and I understand, and I don't think that by restudying that north elevation, we're getting it down 2 or 3 stories. So that's not what I'm going after, but if you're asking for a motion, I would make a motion for deferral of this application for a restudy of that north elevation, because I don't think that it's met that test for me.
Okay. So that's a motion for deferral for restudy of north elevation. Would you?
With board and staff comments and.
With board and staff comments. Okay, so we have a motion made by Mr. Matters for deferral for restudy of north elevation with board and staff comments. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I'll go down the roll. Mr. Trantham, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Brown,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters,
Yeah.
and I vote likewise. The motion carries 4-0. I was.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're ready.
Yeah, let's go on to 205 Main Street.
All right, 205 Meeting Street is not rated from about 1986 in height districts 4 and 6 and in the old and historic district. And they are requesting preliminary approval of exterior renovations. You're going to see the location, just to remind everyone, and then we'll be ready for applicant.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tori Joseph. I'm the VP of Design and Construction for Beaumont Hospitality Collection. Back in 2023 is when we submitted this project for conceptual approval. At the time, I actually worked with the architectural team, Cooper Carey, worked with several of you during that. And we really appreciate you all working with us as we kind of slowed down this process and sectioned off the building into smaller phases, just so we could keep this building open and operational for our community. I did want to clarify that this is the last BAR presentation that we plan to submit. So it does include all the remaining elements that were included in the conceptual presentation that we plan to follow through on. And this one specifically is focused on the Market Street courtyard and the entry alley. Obviously, we do want to enhance those areas for our guests, but we are also heavily focused on activating all of those spaces around the ground floor of our building as it is in the center of downtown Charleston for both locals and visitors. So thank you all for your time, and I will pass on to Keith.
Thanks, Tori. My name is Keith Simmel. I'm an architect with Cooper Carey. I will preemptively ask for 5 more minutes, please, and I will go.
Feeling never grouchier, so yes. Let's aim for 13.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, I'll go very quick. All right, so you're all familiar with the site, Charleston Place. There, the AE 10 flood zone nips the corner at Meeting and Market Street. So there are some concerns right there at the corner, which we'll get into down through the slides. Some existing conditions here of the hotel from all different angles. The areas that we're going to specifically talk about are the arrival court on the north side of the hotel and the Market Street courtyard which was coincidentally the original arrival entry for the hotel. So here's the existing plan, what's out there right now. This is what we're proposing to do, create an entry alley off of Meeting Street, a new porte cochere that is much more light and airy and allows cars to move more freely through that space, flowing out to Hazel Street. This is a comparison of the before and after. You can see they're pretty close to each other. We rearranged some of the landscaping, and we're maintaining as many of the existing trees as possible. Here's some details again showing the path as it moves up towards Hazel Street. At some point, at one point, this road has to be accessible to the public parking garage. So there's an area that then becomes the exit from our porte cochere drop-off area. It becomes a two-way street. Some low ground shrubs, and then you can see on the plans are marked what the existing trees are to remain. We move further south into the main area where the cars would be arriving from the right-hand side of the plan off of Meeting Street. One-way traffic into a large covered porte cochere, but essentially column-free, so it becomes much less imposing than the space in the form that's right there. And we'll show you some renderings in just a moment. And here's the alley itself. We've got crepe myrtles that reach out over that to create a really inviting entry drive and a formal gate at the border of that space right along Meeting Street.
So does that require fire truck access or?
It would require fire truck access, and we've been through the TRC and spoken with the fire truck and have approval for the approach that we're taking.
They're just crepe myrtles.
Yeah.
That's right.
So here's that entry out drive as it exists right now. And here, excited?
No, you can't go back.
Here's what we're proposing. So we've got a formal entry a gate, metal gate with stone base, paved driving surface. Those are concrete sort of cobbled pavers, a brick band, and the bluestone on either side for the sidewalk. Those are the crepe myrtles that sort of form that formal drive lane. And we've got some discrete lighting on either side of the road to sort of brighten your way down that path. In the distance, you can see the new porte cochere. This is looking back at that angle. You can see how heavy the porte cochere is, and the horse fountain that I'm sure you're all familiar with. That will be going away to open up this space, really brighten the area as you arrive from the view to the left. Come in under that, and you'll be moving clockwise through that space. Some very nice calm lighting under the porte cochere, painted metal, very light, very airy. You can see the punched openings going into the building. Also allow more views into the lobby space and a really nice revolving door looking entry that is actually a sliding revolving door. So it'll part as opposed to be a push revolving door. Here's a view. I should have shown these in reverse order here, but here's that as you get right to the porte cochere itself. Some nice signage on the porte cochere, and you can see the revolving door there that from the view here, how dark and in shadow that space is, and now how much more open, airy, light, and inviting to be able to see this all the way from the Meeting Street public right of way. One last view of this area, looking at the horse fountain and the, equestrian fountain, and the porte cochere. The cars move around this in a counterclockwise form, so we'll be coming from the opposite direction. And again, you can see how dramatically more open and inviting that space will be. So jumping to the south Market Street courtyard, you can see the existing plan. That's actually the outline of the original porte cochere with a arrival court with a fountain in the center. We're proposing removing all of that, and you're probably familiar with the fact that they now have they put some artificial sod out in that area. It's really an inviting space, and our intent is to create the space and create it even more inviting as a public, semi-public open space square for the city. The top drawing is the original design that we submitted for conceptual, below is the preliminary existing plan. Here's the proposed plan. Again, a smaller fountain, but a little bit more interactive, a little bit more formal. Paved limestone courtyard lined with landscape, and out to the sidewalk along Meeting Street, or excuse me, Market Street. That sidewalk is being raised from King Street as it moves from west to east to actually align with the floor line of the existing building so that it activates the street. And as you know, right now, the sidewalk is separated from the building as you move from west to east. The street slopes slightly, but as it's enough to require a couple of steps to get up into the building as you move from left to right. So we're elevating that sidewalk, lining the edge of the street with some shrubbery and street trees, and then sloping it back down at an ADA ramp to catch up to the corner as you approach the corner of Market and Meeting.
So you mentioned that it would be a semi-public space. You said that. I didn't know what that meant.
Well, it's open to the public. It is but it's not technically a public park because it's on private property.
Sure.
So I don't know that we want to
Kind of
refer
just
to
like
it
it
as
is
a
right
public
now.
park. Yeah.
Thank you.
At the two corners of the building along Market Street, we're proposing opening up those corners to create a little bit more of an inviting entry into the spaces within the building there, and also create a little bit more room at the corners because we know all the sidewalks in Charleston are pretty tight. We're making the sidewalk as wide as possible, but here at this corner and then at the opposite corner at Market and Meeting, we're also proposing opening that up as well. And here's that plan where we're suggesting and proposing an entrance into the bar space that is currently entered off of the internal walkway within the hotel. As I mentioned before, in some of the renderings you saw for the arrival, we're suggesting some very subtle lighting, mostly uplighting to light up the landscape. We're putting some lights under the trees that are being replaced within the Market Street courtyard. We have permission from zoning permission to remove the existing trees within the Market Street courtyard and replace them with the proposed species that are going out there. And you'll see that in the renderings in just a moment. This is just plans that show the lighting in the motor court and lighting along the sidewalk on Market Street. And here are the renderings. So those are the existing trees. We have permission to remove those trees within that space. The fence and the posts go away because those are sort of vestiges of the old arrival court when this was the original pork share drop-off. And here's what's being proposed. I'll point out that at the corners along the sides of this courtyard, we're replacing the windows within the openings that already exist with these curved glass forms here. The curved glass mimics the canopies that are along the streets that you'll see around the rest of the building. And we think that creates a really nice environment for the spaces within that area that are retail and food and beverage, kind of thrusts those spaces out into the courtyard, gives it a little bit more drama. Here's the head-on look at the courtyard and what is proposed. Here again, you can see the hedge that sort of semi-privatizes it. It's still, people can walk in there the same way that they can right now, but it creates a little bit of a quiet respite to walk into that space off of Market Street and off of the sidewalk. And here's a view looking west, where you will pick up the ramp right there in the foreground on the right-hand side. That's the ADA ramp that gets you up to the level of the sidewalk, and you're kind of along that at level with all the retail spaces and the new paved courtyard, and it catches up to grade as it approaches King Street. You may recall that in the previous submission, we had separated sidewalks. One of your comments was that seemed like it was sort of an either or. And so we've developed this design. There's less than a 30-inch drop from the sidewalk to the street. So there's no need for a guardrail or anything like that. We are using the hedge to create that edge and define the sidewalk, provide a little bit of protection. And there's a handrail that is required for the ramp only.
And the handicap would be entering from King Street or Meeting Street. Is that where you?
Well, the handicap can enter anywhere because
Anywhere.
this sidewalk is designed to be accessible for handicap. There's no longer a separation.
I meant if you were crossing Market Street.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, that's correct. Enter from the corner intersections.
So for what it's worth, any of this is actually in the public right of way. is not under our purview.
That's
Okay.
right, yeah.
Part of this is.
Okay, we'll just look at the 6 inches and then deny that part. Let's do that.
Right. So this is within our building property. This is the corner of Meeting and Market. And here's the view where we're suggesting that the corner get carved out. Kind of creates a little bit more of a path for pedestrians since it's such a busy street to kind of cut that corner and gain access to the pub space that's behind the glass. Here's a view of the opposite corner in King and Market, and we're treating that the same way. I'll also point out that one of your comments from our previous submission, we had shown some designs for the pyramid glass top. We heard those comments that was something that was a little bit of a landmark in Charleston, and we unstudied it, depending on how you're looking at it, and obviously we're suggesting maintaining that pyramid as it currently exists. We will clean it up and make it less foggy. Here are some of the materials that are being suggested. These are all noted on the plans. You've got the metal panel for the porte-cochere, the sort of suggested wrought iron for the patterned supports for the porte-cochere, and some of the infill along the vitrines, and then the other stone materials that we'll be using out primarily in the Market Street corridor. These plans really show what we had, a lot of the work that's happening on the inside of the property, but it does tie to the outside into key components. It's really the porte-cochere on the north side where the arrival court is, and then the 2 corners that show where the architecture is being carved back to create those sort of covered outdoor walkways. And then I'm going to move through these pretty quickly because a lot of this doesn't particularly pertain to what's being presented, other than you can see the very shallow roof. You'll see the detail on that in just a moment, but the very shallow roof for the porte-cochere, the design intent is to really have that maintained as something that's flat, but because it's so large, we do have to have a little bit of a pitch, but we're trying to hide it as much as possible. So it really just looks like this sort of very elegant, streamlined marquee more than anything. We've got a couple more slides that show some of the detail. I'll point out here in the section, you can see the heaviness of the porte-cochere on the top drawing, outside the face of the building on the left-hand side, and then how much more sort of light and open the cantilevered column supported porte-cochere is.
Don't mean to be too pushy, but you are at 13 minutes.
Right, so I think very close. These are just the elevations that show the before and after, porte-cochere down below, and then let me just get to the details because we've already covered most of this on the within the renderings. So I'll jump to the details. So here's the corner. This really applies to both corners, but this one happens to be Meeting and Market. And here's the axiometric view in the upper left-hand corner, carving away that corner, really replicating a lot of the details that exist in the building already, and using the openings of the windows to create that triangular carved out space. Here's a detail of the curved glass window, and that window fits within the opening of the window that's already there. So the precast and everything else that's existing is not being touched. We're just sort of popping that window out and putting this more dramatic light-filled window into that space. It's an axiometric view. And then lastly, we've got the details of the porte-cochere itself, showing the sort of the intricate detail along the profile and the details of the posts that are supporting that up that you will see from the right of way on Market Street. I think that's it.
Okay, great. Any questions of the applicant from the board or from staff?
I have one question.
Yes.
You mentioned the revolving door that's not a revolving door at the entrance to the building. The revolving door that is at the corners.
Yes.
True revolving doors.
True revolving doors, because those doors will not be having luggage going through them. So right now the idea is that those could be just man doors that revolve like the traditional that you see. But because revolving doors are a challenge, and the design intent was to have that feel of a revolving door, it feels a little bit more upscale and elegant, but the doors basically slide in a curved track to allow people to drive their roller boards through the door.
So the meeting and Market and King are both revolving doors.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a quick question about those corners too. The transom panels that are going over where the corner is carved out, are those to be translucent or spandrel or clear glass? And the space that's over it, is that just being opened up? So there's no mechanical or anything in those space? Like,
So there is no, we can't get into the ceiling above that, but because we're popping off the black canopy that's there, we wanted the more open space, so that will be translucent, not vision all the way through that space.
and would all the transom panels then be translucent? Because I'm looking at probably drawing 87 right now. At those.
Are you looking at the rendering?
Well, they're just a corner view.
Oh, I see. Okay.
There's a section where you're outside and over, like, are all of those upper windows
They will be,
translucent?
yeah, they'll be glass, so they'll be reflective, but they will not be visioned.
Okay. Would they be backlit so they glow, or is it?
We can study that. The challenge on that is
Rendering.
sometimes that gives it away.
Yeah.
It's a little bit challenging to do like a shadow box is what we would call that. And it's got to be done just right with the right lighting to make it work.
Yeah.
So oftentimes when it's just translucent, it looks like like it's glowing, but not trying to be something
That makes sense.
that's not, yeah.
And final question, just, I don't know that we hit on it, but in looking at the preliminary approved elevations versus the current, there are kind of pyramid forms on the top of the hyphen elements. And
Yes.
those are being proposed to be removed in the current proposed.
That's correct. And we actually, we spoke with BD about that, and they were sort of withdrawn at our owner's request. They did some analysis of their overall goals and determined that that was not something that they wanted to pursue.
So just because I don't want to make it part of the board discussion, and I wanted to say it directly to you guys, I studied the plans, I looked at them very carefully, and as I did when it came through the first time. There are times when you just want to say and call a project TBC, which is just to better Charleston. And that's the way I feel. I'm done.
Your response to that, sir.
Thank you.
All right, well, if there's-
I would have to defer to the Navarro family for their goals on this project. It really is quite an honor to work on this project for them and with them. And we're very happy to be able to be.
And it was meant for them, right? Yeah, so.
I'm sure he's listening.
Okay, you're at 18 minutes. If there's no other questions from board staff, is there any member of the public that would like to speak regarding this application? Doesn't look like there are any, so city staff comments and recommendations.
Sure. First comment is just recapping the journey, because in part, city staff needed to remember, and we also have some meetings with the board. So this project did receive conceptual approval in March of 2023, staff approval for simple repairs and painting in October of 2023, preliminary approval for rooftop elements, February of 2024. And at that meeting, per direction from the board, this preliminary review package contains the remainder of the work as stated by the applicant related to exterior renovations. Staff affirm the applicant has met the following previous board and staff comments from conceptual approval. The existing clock tower with glass pyramid and clock faces will remain. The existing electrical lanterns will remain. The applicant has received a zoning variance regarding tree removal. And there is no longer a proposal for 2 levels of sidewalk on Market Street, which applicant mentioned. In addition, staff support changes to the awnings at the corner of King and Market Streets, the lighting plan as proposed, the materials palette for both hardscape and elevation changes, and changes to the porte cochere and exterior and courtyard exterior. This next one I'm going to amend when the formal meeting minutes are going to write up, because I wear more than one hat, and I forgot about, because I'm also on the DRC. So this comment will stand, but it'll be amended to say that I would like you to go to the DRC for that landscape buffer between the elevated sidewalk on the street and Market Street near the retail entry that's on 39. Just to look at it from a safety point of view, because when you look at it, it looks really low once you get to the tallest elevation. So I'm gonna make a recommendation that you contact Jason Kronsberg, who runs the DRC, just to have that particular portion of it run through the DRC to understand the impacts there of the landscape buffer approach to the elevation of Market Street. So then when we go to staff conditions, that one will also be amended just to say to bring that portion forward to the DRC. That will be staff condition. And then our recommendation is preliminary approval with board and staff conditions and final review by staff.
Okay, any applicant response?
No, thank you for the comments, and we appreciate the recommendation to talk to the DRC, and we will pursue that. Thank you.
Great, all right, board discussion and a motion.
Yeah, I'd make a motion for preliminary approval with one.
Before it gets into the record,
Yeah.
can you think of another entrance or why am I forgetting the name of it right now? Rotating entrance. Rotating door, yeah. In town. Market Pavilion was the only one that I could think of.
Market Pavilion.
On a thoroughfare.
Yeah, I think that's probably the one that.
Does Charleston Place I'm sorry to ask a question. Does Charleston Place currently have a rotating door on the main entrance? It's not, okay. That's the only one that I can think of.
Yeah.
In town. And I get it. I get why the adjustment was made. I mean, even for staffing too, because they've done a good job of having folks on the King Street side to open the entrance there. But having a rotating door at those corners to me would almost be like putting a rotating door halfway down the block where those other two folks are standing. And that just doesn't fit with me.
Yeah.
I know that's one really small thing, and I will defer to my colleagues. Is it really a big deal? But
yeah, I get where you're coming from. I think revolving doors are important when you anticipate a high volume of traffic, keeps it flowing. And it also is a lot better for maintaining the indoor air quality because you're not like.
I get the reason why you would do it.
So to me, in my mind's eye, I don't see it as appearing peculiar on King Street or Market Street. I mean, they're fancy, but I think that's part of the appeal. I'm comfortable with them as far as my opinion is concerned.
And I know it doesn't get back to the functionality of the doors, it's a typology, but in where all of these interventions are made, and one of, I think, the very successful elements of this is the curved awnings. You know, those have been an iconic element of, Charleston Place since it was developed. And I think the accentuation of the curved window assemblies as they now accentuate those corners are very nice. The pop-out windows that have their curved element. There's this element that's being introduced into a variety of these different areas that I think is quite refined and nice, and it significantly improves a lot of the experiences of a pedestrian and a person. And again, precedent-setting building for, how pedestrians engage with the private buildings of Charleston here. And I'm glad to see that continuing to evolve and such a high quality and highly executed form.
I just thought it was
Yeah.
other high quality luxury hotels. If the hotel, I'm talking to my board, if the hotel were to ever attempt a 5-diamond status, I don't think revolving doors are on that list.
I mean, it might be the thing that
preferred.
pushes it over the top.
I think it's what pulls it down. I'm serious. So,
I mean, as
just throw
far
that
as
out there.
whether it contributes or detracts to the.
It's not in our purview. It doesn't matter, but I'm just.
Yeah,
It is now.
I mean, Michelin's in town. We gotta think about this stuff now. All right, any further comments or a motion?
Matters is now
I
really
know.
quiet compared
Oh,
to
no,
before.
Yeah, no, I'll take the motion.
Okay, the preliminary approval, and just to make sure I recorded it accurately. So that's preliminary approval, was that with board and staff comments? or
And final review about that.
With board, staff?
I didn't mean to delay.
Huh. Yeah, okay, so
Thought
we
you were
have,
changing it because.
yeah, it's like,
pregnant
oh,
pause.
man. All right, so now we have a motion for preliminary approval with board and staff comments and final review by staff. Just to get the motion on the table, I will second it in this case, and so we will go down the roll. Mr. Trantham, how do you vote?
Yay in favor?
Mr. Brown?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Matters? I vote likewise, motion carries 4-0.
Mr. Chair, I would like to respectfully request a human needs break. And so all the gentlemen sitting out in the room who I know
Yeah,
are
okay.
patiently waiting, I promise it will be quick.
Yeah, okay, all right, all right.
Great, I think we're ready for agenda item number 7, which is 200 Meeting Street.
Oh.
Sorry, I didn't see that Joel wasn't here. Sorry.
Oh, poor Joel, it's just transparent. This. There he is, all right,
There we
go.
go. All right. 200 Meeting Street, not rated, date from 1991, Height District 4 in the Old and Historic District, and they are requesting preliminary approval of exterior alterations to the office building and parking garage. Mr. Courtney's gonna locate us really briefly. Now we're ready for applicant presentation.
Great, thank you. My name is Jeff Johnston with SMK Architects, and tonight with me is Jake Barber of Contract Representation and Sarah Edwards, also with the firm. And I think you all know the project. I'm just going to jump right over to BA 301, just way down in the set drawings.
I'm not staying for my presentation.
Sorry.
Trust me, it's probably for the best.
You're not gonna be on the news.
Well, we are excited about this project.
We are as well.
So with the project, you're looking at these wall sections, you can go over these very quickly. We're replacing the ground floor walls and we're replacing them back with CMU, putting stucco on them. So at the end of the day, the walls are gonna kind of look exactly like they look today. And then with the same rustication pattern and all that stuff. The windows, we talked about them last time, just in terms of the materiality. It's aluminum clad wood windows, so wood on the inside and aluminum on the outside. And the mutton, how they join together, that will be aluminum too. The panelings underneath the windows, that's a GFRC product, which is over here by Mr. Brown. That kind of shaped, that's the product. It actually won't be that color, but it's gonna be that product. And along with that, we've got some other materials that will circulate around on the solid wall product, our section. So the existing condition has CMU on stucco or stucco on CMU. And at the base of the wall, if you remember, has a pink kind of granite. And because we're demolishing that first floor wall, we need to put something back. And we're having a hard time finding the pink granite. And maybe the pink granite's a little dated. So we want to use this ultra compact surface that's on that panel there. It is a stone. It still contrasts kind of that darkish color. So it's still contrasting. It's still stone. It's just not pink granite. So that's the proposed material there. So that's the primary condition. We have a solid wall, we have windows. As we look at Meeting Street facade, which is on the screen here, the last time we were looking at different options. We, as a board, we made this decision to use this option, which is the piers on top of below some existing columns. So in between the columns is that glass system I described, and then the columns itself are that CMU. And then the ceiling will be stucco as well. So this is a little bit different project because we're focusing right in on the details, right? So this is the chamfered corner. As a board and as a group, we decided to use the chamfered corner. At that chamfered corner, we have kind of a bowed storefront expression. Again, we have the paneling underneath and the windows up above, and the ceiling is stucco. Here you can also see the canopies. The canopies are steel armatured and wrapped with aluminum. And the face of the canopy is about 13 inches tall, and then it's got a 2-inch kind of cap that goes around it. So it's a pretty simple expression there. As we go down Pickney and Hain, it's a similar storefront expression that we talked about. This is that mid-block moment. If you remember those, there's some mid-block moments, and that has the canopy in the storefront and doors as well. And I think it's important to say that that same depth that was there before will be replaced, replicated. Here we've got the service door that we're going to be replacing, and the man door that goes into the stair that is also a replacement. On the other side, on the North Street, the sidewalk slopes down, and we're going to extend the paneling down to accommodate that slope. Parking garage, this sign that's over here is a replication of a sign from 1913 that show up on the next slide that was a picture from Decoration Flag Day, which I thought it was neat to kind of resurrect it and bring it back. It was a lollipop sign originally. Now we'll put it as a blade sign. That's where that shape comes from. Again, the same canopy, calling attention to the parking garage as a place for people to be. So we've got a new pedestrian entry. We've got the driveway with the canopies. There's an existing enclosed stair that has doors, solid doors to the sidewalk. We want to take those doors off and make that another entry with a canopy. And then this is the other pedestrian entry. There's that historic picture in 1912 and 1913. But the same idea on both sides of the street. Upstairs on the 4th floor, something you won't ever see. We're putting stairs on the outside and another canopy on the 4th floor. It'll be the 6th floor of the garage, 4th floor of the office building. Some details to talk about. On the garage itself, we will be painting all the existing metallic components, so the levers, and there's some grills down the 1st floor. We'll be painting that darker color that's on the board that's circulating. And these are just those perspectives, kind of going back to the mid block. This is that chamfered corner. Meeting Street elevation. The other chamfered corner, which is the same, and then kind of a drone view. And lastly, a colored kind of rendition of what we're thinking the finished product would be. With that, I'll end my presentation.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the board or staff?
Man, I like the corners.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
You gotta get this show on the road now.
Not really a question, but okay.
So you're not able to find the pink marble. Is that the color that you're also suggesting?
Yes, sir.
Suggesting?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to
And
see it
that's
again, Mr. Brown?
Right, but so just the bottom.
Yeah,
Just the
the
bottom, yeah,
rusticated
right.
base.
So the bottom of the
Okay, okay,
rusticated base is,
Thank you.
it's about 2.5 feet, something like that.
Right, okay.
But I do want to point out on the garage, we are not demolishing the walls on the garage. And now we'd have a kind of a conflict between that and the pink. So
Mhm.
we're proposing to take off the pink on the garage and extend the stucco down to the grade.
Mhm.
And not point that out.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I don't imagine that there's any member of the public who would like to speak regarding this application. Are you serious? I'm sorry, I should have said, are you serious? I just, it's been a day.
It's been a moment.
Okay,
The
city
news, the
staff.
news may not be here, but come on.
I know, city staff comments and recommendations.
The applicant received conceptual approval in December of 2024 to include the version with chamfered corners. Staff support details as shown for renovations and associated partial demolitions and changes to windows, storefronts, the rustication of the base of the building, as well as the exterior finishes, as shown in the package. I know you know this, but I need to have it formally in the record, is that when you are ready, we will need to provide a separate comprehensive sign package for you. We have no staff conditions and our recommendation is preliminary approval with board conditions and final review by.
Okay, any applicant response to that?
No.
Okay, board discussion and a motion and a vote.
I don't have much to say. I mean, I'm in agreement with staff's comments and agreement with everything that's presented here. I don't know that I have anything to add further.
Yeah, this is an entirely satisfactory application. I have no comments at all.
Yeah, I would say the application packet is incredibly comprehensive, easy to read. Yeah, so appreciate that.
Certainly.
And thank you for taking the opportunity to open up this block too. I mean, I really think that, you know, having the corners open to pedestrian traffic and getting rid of those, really makes a difference.
Definitely.
Okay, any further comments or motion?
I would make a motion for preliminary approval with board comments and final review by staff.
Okay, we have a motion for preliminary approval with board comments.
Board and staff comments, I guess. Oh, staff had no comments.
No, they don't. They didn't say anything. Board comments and final review by staff. Do I have a second for that?
I was like,
Okay, we'll go down the roll. Mr. Trent, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Brown,
yay in favor.
Mr. Metters,
Yay.
I vote likewise. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.